I saw the deputies grab my son by both arms and twist them behind his back. The silver cuffs clinked, cold against his brown wrists. His lips trembled, but he tried to be strong. He tried to look like the man he was raised to be. But I saw the truth in his eyes. He was scared. And then, I looked up, and saw the woman who did this to him. She sat high above us in the courtroom, draped in her judicial robe like a queen on her throne. Her face was stone. Her voice was clear and sharp as she declared, sentenced to 15 years in state prison. That woman was my mother-in-law. Yes, the woman who held my baby the night he was born, who whispered prayers over him and said God had plans for his life. She was the one who just crushed it. She was the one who signed the papers. She was the one who could have saved him, but instead, she made him a criminal. Before I continue, let me pause here and say this. To all my beautiful subscribers, thank you. Thank you for riding with me, for feeling every twist in these stories, for laughing, crying, and burning right along with me. Your support means everything. And to my new and returning viewers who have not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? That subscribe button is the fuel that keeps this channel burning hot and deep. I cannot wait for you to smash it and join the family. Now, go on and tap it. Also, please remember to drop your thoughts in the comments after this chapter. Let us talk. Let us feel. Let us heal or sin together. Now, let me take you back. My name is Leah Klein, 44 years old, born and raised in Pennsylvania, but living in suburban New York. I married into a family of wealth and prestige, the Kleins. My husband, Kevin, was the golden boy of his high-achieving clan. Smart, polished, and obsessed with perfection. And his mother? Victoria Klein, the Honorable Supreme Court Judge of the 7th District, was the Iron Matriarch. Picture pearls, a tight bun, a Bible in one hand, and a gavel in the other. That woman did not bend. Not for anything or anyone. At first, I thought marrying Kevin meant I was part of something powerful, something untouchable. But soon, I realized I was only a guest in their world. A tolerated outsider. A girl from a modest home who would never be good enough in her eyes. But I stayed for love. I stayed for our son, Jordan. Jordan was my entire heart. My one and only child. He was smart, athletic, gentle. He wanted to be a marine biologist, and I would have sold my organs to make that happen. But everything changed the day he turned 21. He was arrested. Charged with felony assault and drug possession. The media went wild. Cameras outside our house. Headlines that used words like gang ties and violent background. None of it was true. None of it even made sense. My son had never even smoked a cigarette. But still, he was painted as the villain. And the judge assigned to the case? Victoria. I begged her to recuse herself. I went to her house, dropped to my knees, cried on her hardwood floors. But she said the law was the law. Kevin told me not to make it worse. Worse? My baby was about to be locked in a cage because his grandmother wanted to protect her spotless career. The day of the sentencing, I did not cry at first. I sat frozen, numb. But when they dragged Jordan away and he shouted, "Mom! Mom, help me!" that was when I fell. I screamed. I clawed at the wooden benches. I passed out cold. I woke up hours later in the hospital. Alone. No Kevin. No Victoria. Just the sound of a flat-screen TV in the room airing the breaking news. Judge Victoria Klein sentences her own grandson in landmark ruling. I stayed in that hospital for 2 days. I did not eat. I did not sleep. On the 3rd day, Zion came to visit. Zion was Jordan's childhood friend. 23, tall, rich cocoa skin, tattoos that told his story, and eyes that carried an ancient soul. He had always been respectful, soft-spoken, and present. He held my hand. He wiped my tears. And then, he said something I will never forget. She chose her seat on the bench over his life. What are you going to choose? That night, I made my choice. I started digging. I stopped being the grieving mother and became a silent warrior. I went through files, old letters, emails, newspaper clippings. I reached out to a reporter who owed me a favor. And slowly, a picture began to form. The crime Jordan was accused of. It was tied to a gang case Victoria had cleaned up years ago by framing kids from the wrong neighborhood. The same neighborhood Zion and Jordan grew up in. Jordan had gotten too close to something he was not supposed to see. And Victoria made sure he paid the price. I was holding secrets that could burn everything she built to the ground. But revenge is best served with lips trembling, skin hot, and a lover who should be forbidden. The night Zion came back to see me again, I was in nothing but a robe. We sat in silence. His hand brushed my thigh. My breath hitched. I should have stopped it. I should have sent him away. But I let him touch me. I let him kiss away every tear that woman caused. I let him taste my anger, my shame, and my need. He took me apart, piece by piece, right there on the couch where Jordan used to sit and play Xbox. And I let him. That night, I began building something powerful. A weapon Victoria could never see coming. And it started with a single, carefully sealed envelope. I remember how his lips trembled when they landed on my neck. How his hands lingered at the knot of my robe, trembling, like he was asking for permission without saying a word. And I gave it. I gave him permission to devour the woman I had become. A broken mother. A betrayed wife. A woman who had nothing left to lose. Zion kissed me like he had waited years. He kissed me like he had watched me suffer for too long. He kissed me like he knew what it felt like to be forgotten. And that night, I was not Kevin's wife. I was not Jordan's mother. I was a woman who had been tossed into the fire, and Zion was the one who pulled me into the flames, and made me feel alive again. I should have felt shame. But I did not. All I felt was heat. And revenge curling in my belly like smoke. The next morning, I watched him sleep in the soft glow of the living room light. My robe was draped over his chest. His jeans were half on, half off. His tattooed arm rested over his eyes. He looked like sin dressed in quiet peace. I made coffee while my heart raced with guilt. And then I reminded myself, guilt was a luxury women like me no longer had time for. I had a son in prison. I had a mother-in-law with blood on her gavel. And I had a body that had just been ruined by a man half my age. I needed to stay focused. The first thing I did was get access to Jordan's public defender. I met her in a cafe under the name Rachel Michaels. I told her I had information about another case Victoria had handled a decade ago, one involving a boy who died in juvenile custody after being falsely labeled as part of a gang operation. She brushed me off at first. Until I handed her an old notebook Jordan had hidden years ago. In it were names. Notes. Connections. He had been investigating what happened to his friend Andre, a quiet boy who was beaten to death in a holding cell when they were just 15. Jordan had found out that Judge Klein had sentenced Andre without proper counsel, after striking a deal with the district attorney to clear the pipeline. They made examples out of innocent boys to feed their statistics. And now, they had tried to do the same to my son. While the legal side moved in shadows, Zion kept coming over. Not as Jordan's friend anymore. But as mine. It started with little things. Fixing the broken latch on the window. Bringing over takeout. Sitting close to me while we watched old crime documentaries, laughing at the irony of it all. And then his hand would find my thigh. His lips would trail my shoulder. And we would forget our names in the heat of it all. It was not love. Not at first. It was survival. It was comfort in the filth of our grief. And still, it felt so good I could barely breathe. Kevin, meanwhile, grew more distant. He spent most nights at his office, drowning in work he never explained. We barely spoke. When we did, he only repeated one thing. "Let it go, Leah. She knows what she is doing." What a man. Defending the woman who buried his son like she was just doing her job. What Kevin did not know was that his mother's past was rotting beneath her perfect legacy. I had pulled old case files from the court archives through a librarian I knew from college. And in those files, I saw it all. Names she had buried, children whose lives she had reduced to paperwork. Then came the real twist. I found a series of payments from a corporate prison contractor wired into a foundation Victoria co-founded. It was supposed to help rehabilitate juvenile offenders. But it was a shell. A funnel. A place where blood turned into cash. I printed every page. Every receipt. Every name. I did not know it yet, but that envelope in my hand was the bullet that would destroy her entire empire. But I was not ready to pull the trigger. Not yet. First, I needed to see my son. It took weeks of waiting and multiple rejections before I finally got my visitation request approved. When Jordan walked into that cold concrete room, wearing that orange jumpsuit with the word "inmate" stamped across his chest, I nearly fell apart again. But I stood strong for him. He sat down across from me. His hands were shaking. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I never left you," I whispered. He looked older. Harder. But when I touched his hand through the glass, he broke. His lips quivered, and his head fell forward as he cried into his fists. I cried too. And when I left, I knew I would burn down the world to get him out. That night, Zion came over again. He saw the exhaustion in my face. He kissed it away, softly at first, then with heat and hunger. But this time, it was different. This time, I led him upstairs. I let him take me on the same bed where my marriage had died years ago. Where Kevin stopped touching me. Where my heart had gone to die. But Zion brought it back to life. He moved inside me like he was rewriting every hurt, every scream I had swallowed, every tear I had shed. And when it was over, I laid against his chest, trembling, knowing that I had crossed a line I could never return from. And I did not care. The next morning, I sealed the envelope. Inside was everything. The payments. The illegal sentences. The forged signatures. Her private text messages with prosecutors. Even a few blurry screenshots from an old burner phone someone in her office had leaked years ago, showing her in compromising conversation with a private prison CEO. I wrote one sentence on the outside of the envelope in red ink. "You took my son. Now I will take your crown." I slid the envelope into the mailbox of Samantha Ellings, the most ruthless political reporter in the state. And then I waited. I was no longer afraid. Because even if I lost everything, I had already lost too much. I had nothing left to protect. Nothing, except the truth. And the man whose body was still warm in my bed. I watched her face crumble on live television. Her signature composure, gone. That tight bun of hers, undone. Her lip trembled as the journalist read off the list of offenses, each one sharper than the next. Bribery. Evidence suppression. Illegal sentencing of minors. Fraudulent use of a juvenile reform foundation. Every word hit like a hammer. The woman they once called the Gavel Queen of New York was now being asked to step down. The envelope had done its job. It had ripped through her entire career like a wildfire through a dry forest. And I was the arsonist. The morning the story broke, I was sitting in my kitchen with a cup of bitter coffee. Zion was asleep upstairs, sprawled across my bed, his arms stretched across the empty spot where I used to lie beside my husband. He looked peaceful. I did not. My phone had started buzzing nonstop by 7 a.m., news stations, political blogs, local community pages. They all ran with the same headline. Breaking, Judge Victoria Klein under investigation following anonymous leak. Kevin called. 6 times. I did not answer. He had made his choice when he stood beside her during Jordan's sentencing. He could drown with her. 2 days later, Victoria made a public statement. She stood behind a podium in the courthouse she had ruled over for nearly 30 years. Her voice cracked for the first time I could ever remember. Her hands trembled as she denied the accusations. She blamed political sabotage. She promised full cooperation. She refused to step down. But the damage was done. Whispers were turning into roars. Investigations launched. Other cases reopened. Parents of victims began protesting outside the courthouse, waving photos of their lost children. Young black boys she had labeled thugs for the sake of her record. And then came the final blow. Jordan's case was reopened. The pressure from the press forced the court to re-examine the evidence. A special investigator was brought in. They found multiple inconsistencies, including a key witness who was quietly paid off through a consulting firm connected to the Klein Foundation. The charges were dropped. Jordan was released. The day he walked out of prison, I was waiting by the gates in a navy coat, the one he used to say made me look like Olivia Pope. I could barely breathe as I watched the gates open. And then, there he was. Thinner. Harder. But alive. He walked into my arms, and I held him so tightly I thought I might shatter his ribs. I whispered, "I got you, baby." I never stopped fighting. His tears soaked my collarbone. He asked about Kevin. I told him the truth. Kevin had moved out. Quietly. Ashamed. Not even a goodbye. I had not seen him since the press exposed the scandal. He was a coward, a man who watched his son be buried alive and never lifted a finger. But I was not done burying the Kleins. Judge Victoria Klein was indicted 2 months after the story broke. Her court seat was stripped. Her pension frozen. Her home raided. Cameras followed her every move. And when she showed up at my front door one cold, gray morning in January, I felt nothing. She stood there, hair messy, coat hanging off her frail shoulders like a flag of surrender. "I want to speak," she said. I stepped outside. "I want to see my grandson." "You saw him," I replied. "You saw him every day in that courtroom and still locked him in a cage." "I made mistakes, Leah. You destroyed children for ambition." She looked broken. But I felt no pity. She tried to speak again, but I shut the door without another word. Jordan stayed with me for a while, trying to adjust to the freedom he had not tasted in months. He slept with the lights on. He had nightmares. But Zion helped him heal. That surprised me most of all, how Zion never ran. Even after I told him I had used him in the beginning. Even after I tried to push him away, he stayed. Not as Jordan's friend. Not as my dirty little secret. But as someone who truly cared. One night, while Jordan was out with friends, Zion and I sat on the couch. No touching. No heat. Just silence. He looked at me and asked, "Are we still surviving, or are we finally living?" I did not answer. I kissed him instead. Not with anger this time. But with softness. With hope. Weeks turned into months. Jordan started working with a nonprofit that helped ex-convicts rebuild their lives. He spoke at community centers. He shared his story. People listened. People cried. And Zion? He became mine. Not because I needed him. But because he reminded me that I was still capable of being seen. Desired. Loved. I once believed that betrayal would break me. That having my son ripped from me, my husband abandon me, my body ache with guilt and lust for a boy I once drove to soccer practice, that all of that would leave me ruined. But I was not ruined. I was reborn. My son got his freedom. My mother-in-law lost her crown. My heart found its own rhythm again. And the envelope? It still sits in my drawer. Not as a weapon anymore. But as a reminder that sometimes, justice does not come with sirens or gavels. Sometimes, it comes with pain, with fire, with a woman who has lost too much to be afraid. And sometimes, it comes with one sealed envelope. And a kiss that tastes like redemption.